Podcast. We are getting things kicked off this week with an exciting guest for you guys. Matt Prater is the Executive Vice President of Innovation at OuterBox. He's a veteran digital strategist and executive leader where he currently serves as EVP of Innovation with a career deeply rooted in the evolution of search engine optimization and paid media. Prater is responsible for driving the agency's technological advancements, ensuring their service offerings stay ahead of industry shifts. He has been instrumental in OuterBox's growth from a boutique firm to a nationally recognized powerhouse in the e-commerce space. His work focuses on innovation and AI, leading the charge to integrate AI-driven tools and automation into digital marketing workflow and improving client ROI. Historically, he's played a major role in bridging the gap between technical SEO, high-performance web design, paid search, and creative cohesion to drive growth engines for mid-market and enterprise brands. Within the agency, he's known for his innovation-first mindset, helping the team navigate complex algorithms, updates for the transition towards the answer engine optimization. Before stepping into his role as EVP, Matt held various leadership positions within the company, including VP of Integrated Strategy. His long tenure at OuterBox has made him a central figure in the agency's culture and his reputation for being data-backed and results-oriented. Matt, thanks so much for coming on, man. Appreciate you spending some time.
Yeah, of course. What an intro.
Yeah, let's go. So, would love to, hear a little bit about, obviously I gave your background within the context of OuterBox, but where'd you grow up? What'd you study and what got you into agency life?
Sure. So grew up in Colorado. Here I'm in Denver now, but grew up a little bit north in the Boulder area. Went to college at CU in Boulder, and then migrated further down the road to Denver. So pretty much been here my whole life. And yeah, I've been kind of, interested in technology, interested in advertising, just kind of like the creative aspect of it. I wouldn't consider myself a creative though. So I didn't think that was
more
really
a quant.
Yeah. And I didn't really, I always took more like math related stuff in high school and in college. I started in engineering. After about a semester or two, realized I was not an engineer. So pivoted into economics and political science. I really liked applying some of the mathematical modeling to real world environment applications. And I thought political science was kind of a good direct application of that, and kind of getting the background and how politics has taken form in our country from the early days of Greek democracy to kind of where we are now. But yeah, I thought that like econometric modeling really made a lot of sense to me as far as how you can apply math to real world situations. Obviously, there's a lot of assumptions in those models, which translates pretty well to a lot of the models we see now with AI, or things like media mix modeling. There's always this kind of underlying idea that models are incorrect inherently, but trying to understand and triangulate several models and signals together to get what's actually happening. So yeah, that's kind of how I got here. I really didn't think I would go into advertising, even though it was always interesting to me. I thought I'd be more in the economics or, public policy, but then I realized that's pretty boring too. And it was right. I graduated right around the time that Facebook ads was really taking off, and I was teaching tennis at the time. Got introduced to someone who was running a digital agency. He had a background working at Yahoo in the 90s. So it was kind of on the early age of digital analytics, web analytics, and advertising within the digital space. So got my first peek at Google Analytics around then and was pretty much hooked. Wanted to learn as much as I could. And I started out by learning a lot about the analytics behind social media. As a Facebook user, right when they switched over to allowing non-edu addresses, I think like 2006 or 7 when I got my first Facebook account. But then I saw like the whole back end of that and was really fascinated by the data, which was more vast then that you could have access to. Like I remember you could target single users on Facebook ads, which was
Wow.
kind of creepy, kind of cool. So we do some funny ways of targeting people. You could pull down like user IDs and literally target individual user IDs. So we'd put like people's names and pictures in the ads. And then, that got a lot of buzz at conferences, and that was a good lead gen kind of tactic for the agency I was at. And I got a lot of exposure when I was, early 20s to like real companies who are tipping their toe in the water into social advertising and analytics. And then just kind of progressed from there, got into more broad digital marketing. So kind of learned Google AdWords at the time. Decided to kind of go deep there. It was a more mature platform, and I liked that it was more stable than Facebook ads. You could like pick up a phone and call Google still, and actually talk to a representative there to figure out what was going on with the ad account. So then kind of got into a manager track, and from there expanded outside of paid search and paid social to more broad digital marketing and owning some of the like own channels as well, like email, SEO, web. And then, over my years in agency, I worked in-house for a little while at PopSockets. And then, there's always this idea within younger agency cohorts that once you graduate out of agencies, you'll go to brand side, and then everything will be the land of milk and honey. You'll have all these resources and all the time in the world to just focus on one account. But I realized that that's not the case. And the e-commerce store never closes. And when your team reports into the CEO, you get a lot of pressure on, hey, why is Black Friday, not exceeding last year, or why is this thing broken, or hey, my daughter said we should be on Pinterest and maybe we should look into that. All right, a lot of different types of stakeholders on in-house. So found myself back at agency at Monks, where I spent the last 4 years, and that it was cool seeing the buying power of a large global agency. It's led by Martin Sorrell, who has made a name for himself in the industry and really created the holdco model. So Monks was kind of a reimagination of that, where it's digital first, everything around, a unified offering around digital. And we worked with some really cool clients, made some cool case studies. I was able to help pioneer some of the generative AI applications within advertising. We did a lot around creative, and then focused on measurement. So some net new capabilities around data science, where we don't necessarily have a quant on the team or someone who has a PhD in data science, but, with some of the technology around AI and statistical modeling, you can get some of that capability from a team who can at least steer it with plain language and not knowing how to, do t-tests or whatever from your statistics days in college. So, I've been really excited about, applying certain AI capabilities to advertising workflows, measurement, and now at OuterBox, different agency orchestration within the company. So we kind of have what we call a operating system, where we ingest a lot of different client signals, different sales cycle, client health, happiness, and kind of the life cycle of where we're at in client relationships. So all in kind of analyzing where we can gain an edge against competitors, where we can improve our output, so better quality analysis for our clients and better performance in advertising, but also gain efficiencies internally. So trying to see if we can, have a faster cycle of optimization, learning more, applying changes at a faster rate, and not having to do a lot of busy work with humans.
I love it. And then is the innovation title new to OuterBox or you? And what do you think innovation means inside of the context of, I'm assuming are you guys an indie agency?
Yeah, we're indie.
Okay.
Yep. So it is a relatively new department here. It's the first time someone's been in this role. And we've had some people who are more, AI, like early adopters, some hand raisers who just wanted to pilot some technology. We had an opportunity where we had kind of some people had left the company. We had acquired an agency last fall called ADM out of Chicago, when they had a lot of digital health clients, a lot of e-commerce, and a really strong analytics offering, and someone who was leading the analytics and data department, and really interested in expanding that purview or scope into AI. So kind of at the same time I came on, she was appointed the head of the AI team, and now we're kind of unified under innovation. So what innovation really means to me is twofold. There's kind of the forward-facing case study client type applications where maybe we're developing new tools and new technology that we want to apply to our client relationships and help them either stand out against their competitors, and maybe it's capabilities around a new measurement solution we talked about, something that you would maybe get featured on, in a Google blog or Facebook, where we're going to be on a stage talking about it somewhere, and that's kind of like the capital I, external innovation. But we're doing a lot of work is this kind of under internal innovation around our service lines, and reimagining areas where maybe we've kind of lost an edge, or technology has outpaced an old way of doing things. So reapplying and taking kind of an inward look at processes that might need or benefit from new technology and capability. So we've been able to kind of turn that internally and find, within our different service lines, we kind of call it like a menu of services. And we're really talking with internal stakeholders on how we can either enhance those workflows with AI, orchestrate several tools together with AI, or fully augment a process from end to end. So by year end, we're looking to do that across each of our service lines and have at least AI-enabled services across the entire book of menu options.
What are the most impactful deployments of AI within the agency world? Where are you seeing the most amount of innovation, and how is that freeing up humans to do more meaningful work?
Yeah, there's a couple. I think one of the things I learned when I was working at PopSockets was how long creative takes to develop. And it's, from the time you shoot a commercial or, shoot any type of, footage, getting those assets in hand to deploy into a ad platform can take like over a quarter, like 6 months. So we were planning for, Q4 and Black Friday in July, and then it was still a tight turnaround to get all your different variations, all your different formats and specs. And there's a lot of just lost communication bouncing between teams. So if you're working with a creative team, they're not necessarily experts in the differences between Pinterest and Google and Twitter and YouTube ad formats. So, it takes a lot of coordination and a lot of, spec sheets and kind of cumbersome processes. And then an iterative cycle of like, okay, we have this and we want to apply these treatments and we want to cut these down. So it's a cumbersome process. And, one of the things we did at Monks early on was identify, for e-commerce specifically, there's always a ton of photography with like a model on a white background. And that's not a good ad. But if you put in a generative AI background and a new headline or text overlay that makes it more cohesive, all of a sudden you can get 10 different variations with the same photo. And you can have it templated to spit out every variation across YouTube Shorts and Instagram Stories and all the different formats. So that cut down the production time from like months to days, and you could just get such a higher quality output for that. But not all advertisers are using, highly visual photography or video. Like there's a lot of still, text ads or SEO where it happens kind of behind the scenes. And a lot of what goes into that is research. So, LLMs are very good at applying some of this very thorough research, and you can use those to kind of source new applications of SEO strategy or keyword generation or ad copy generation. So some of those things would take a lot of time in researching and competitive analysis, where we can have those happen behind the scenes before we even put it in the hands of a strategist. So they just get a huge head start on the process that they would have already had to do. So if we can have a lot of the research, analysis, and kind of grunt work done beforehand, then humans get to spend more time doing more creative, problem solving or iterating or ideation around a vast source of research. I'd say the third really big application of AI, and I kind of mentioned this, is around analysis. And there's this kind of long-standing confusion around attribution and deduping data, and you have all these data sets between the various platforms. Google Analytics might say something different than your Facebook ads, and that'll definitely say something different than your YouTube ads. So using AI to synthesize a lot of this data, helping to understand and triangulate between disparate data sources has been a big benefit. And like I was saying earlier, not every team has a data scientist on staff. But if you have Claude and can prompt it pretty well, then you can get some pretty impressive analysis on a data set that would have been quite challenging before. So some net new capabilities for teams as well.
Very cool. You have been a big proponent of the sunk cost of ROAS, mentioning that brands often will stay with a broken strategy because they are married to a measure like ROAS, which is easy to measure, cost per acquisition, LTV, but that these are becoming the new era's vanity metrics. And essentially, what's the most important factor in a brand leader getting uncomfortable around the idea of like a standardized metric and being able to look at their campaign in a more holistic way?
Yeah, I think like all the vanity metrics, the thing that they're missing is context. So like, okay, you got a 4x ROAS, like, is that good? And that would always be a question from, the CEO, like at PopSockets when I was there. Is, okay, we have this 3x ROAS, but what does that mean? Like, does that incorporate like the marketing team's salaries? Like what's the return here? And what does that mean for our business? Like, are we still growing or are we just more profitable? So, any of these metrics really need a North Star on, okay, are we trying to improve the bottom line and get better efficiency? Or are we trying to 10x our revenue growth? And there's a balance there. So you can kind of grow steadily over time and keep your ROAS between a certain threshold. Or if you need to, save some money or bank some cash for, a bigger spend later on, you might want to turn it more to a profitability angle. And I think that the old kind of trope for agencies is that they operate in silos and you don't really see a full picture of company profitability or any other costs or any other channels that you might be implementing as a brand. So if an agency is only seeing paid channels, but they're missing all the owned channels, it's hard to make CTR or ROAS turn into a business outcome. And I think that leaders who are thinking about this in the more sophisticated way are taking that broader approach and contextualizing all these metrics to where, okay, our goal is to hit this EBITDA number. What are all the inputs that make up that? And let's put some guardrails on each of these signals that might get us there in the long run. So yeah, I think that like, if you look at any one metric, yeah, you can improve it, but is that actually translating to business outcomes?
Sometimes. You've also been a big advocate of, the death of the silo. You talked a little bit about that in your last answer. How do you practically get teams that are, engaged in tactics like SEO, paid media, CRO, title, to stop working in silos? And what in your mind does a unified growth engine actually look like when you're trying to advise clients to break down some of these traditional silos?
Yeah, I think, simply having a venue to discuss these cross-channel trends or analyses together is a good start. You'd be surprised. Like, a lot of these meetings just happen in silos. So of course they're going to stay there. Like, if there's no one bridging the gap between those, um, the story just dies in the individual channel KPIs. I've seen it across agencies where at Monks we called it a digital strategist. Their role was to create through lines between each of the trends you see in any respective channel, and translate that into actual business outcomes. So what are all these things meaning for the number that the company is looking to improve? Maybe they just want to improve their CPA. Great, but like, did you get more quality leads out of this? Like, I don't know. You can get cheaper leads, but that doesn't necessarily mean more revenue or more pipeline growth. So having someone whose responsibility is to own the outcome, I think is the main thing that sets apart good strategy from disparate strategy. Right now at OuterBox, we have client service managers that kind of own these discussions. I've seen the title can change depending on agency or internal companies, but I think the agency side, you need someone to help tie that all together. But on the brand side or client side, there needs to be an advocate as well that can translate that up to the C-level. And it's when I was on the brand side, we'd get questions all the time about, okay, this agency said, our number did this thing, but like, what's that mean? Is it good? Is it bad? Like, what is it? What's the context of this, data point? And I think really good agency partners are equipping their client counterparts with a very executive friendly story that can make sense to the C-suite or investors or other ownership groups, or if they're a public company, the market.
We've been spending a little bit of time talking about agentic in the context of like how SEO is being augmented by this new practice or tactic of AEO. Looking at some of the trends, 60% of searches no longer end with a click. Searches are disparate now. There's not this one winner named Google that kind of like owns this lion's share of the market. User behavior is transitory between different AIs, depending on what they might have up in a given moment. It's being influenced by like what hardware they're talking to. Are you talking to it through your phone, your Meta glasses, or your computer? So there hasn't been like a clear winner in AEO or where people do their searches, and set, unlike in the Google kind of dominance. And then you also are starting to see ads creep into agentic ecosystems most early with ChatGPT. I'd be curious, how are you advising clients in this new world of, SEO moving to AEO, and what are the major trends that clients need to be looking at in order to optimize for this new era of search?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly the biggest threat to traditional search that we've seen. And Google has been, the pillar in search over the past 20 years or so. And it's fundamentally shifted in how users are interacting with each of the search surfaces, and different generations of people. Like, Google came around when I was, in early middle school, and kind of it's been a part of my life and how to Google things properly. But for kids that are 10 12 now, a lot of them are searching on TikTok first, or YouTube, or Instagram. So search fundamentally is changing, but Google still owns the SERP, and I'd say that they still are kind of dominating from an AEO or AIO, GEO standpoint. But the big shift is now ads appear under the AI overviews. So ads are not front and center anymore. And there are going to be ads within ChatGPT, for example. So are people actually going to click through on a ChatGPT ad and do those unit economics work the same way that Google AdWords has in the past? That's still to be seen. And the way I advise clients is that they shouldn't count anything out. Same way as, back maybe 10, 15 years ago, you want to test any new channel that becomes available. And maybe you see a signal that shows, oh, hey, maybe Pinterest is worth investigating and checking out to see the viability. But on the other side, you don't want to spend your budgets too thin. And I think you don't want to be chasing the shiny new object. And I think that the fundamental strategy remains the same. So Google is always going to be trying to provide the best, most relevant context or content to any given inquiry, whether it came from YouTube or Gemini or whatever. They're trying to give you the most relevant result for your intent. And they've gotten way better at determining intent. So we used to have to get there through keywords, and there were problems with keywords. You couldn't always see the context of a search. So maybe someone, if you're offering a service, maybe someone's actually searching for how to do it on their own. So you don't want to surface ads when someone's trying to look for their own. So there were negative keywords that we would have to add. Same thing with SEO. You want to provide Google enough signals to know that, hey, my website has relevance for XYZ service that I provide. Now, though, the LLMs can do a really good job on parsing semantics and what your actual intent was. So what I think is even more important now is having your data structure in a way that the LLMs can quickly and easily read and determine whether or not your content is relevant. And a good example of this is, in a question answer type scenario, like you see in Gemini or ChatGPT, when people are just like searching questions. How is OpenAI or Gemini determining what the answer to that question is? Well, they're, crawling the whole web. Reddit, you'll see a lot of Reddit threads start to surface. People on Reddit aren't necessarily experts, though, in a given topic. Maybe they are.
Yeah, it's the knowledge of crowds, right?
There's not a guarantee there. And the same thing with maybe an FAQ on a website. So what I've seen as a trend is a lot of brands or websites or anyone trying to show up in AI overviews or in the question answer type interface is adding more content in a question answer format on their website. So structured data, especially around relevant services or maybe product catalogs, like if you have eCommerce, that still remains the same fundamentals. So if you have a messy data and a messy structure, you're still not going to really guarantee you're showing up. So a lot of the core blocking and tackling that we've been preaching for years and years still applies now. And I think that there's less of a reason to have to game the SEO or there's less opportunity to black hat the SEO now, where the ones who are prioritizing quality content will still be rewarded for that.
Interesting. You've also touched on the idea of AI agents making purchases for us. Agentic commerce is a big topic that is top of mind. In a world where AI agents become shoppers, how does a brand maintain emotional loyalty, especially when the idea that probably the first thing that humans will be willing to outsource is things that they consider commodities? So do I care that much about my toilet paper brand? Do I care that much about my milk as long as it's organic and the least expensive option? Do I care what brand the celery is? And also the big promise of like the connected Internet of Things and like, why does my refrigerator need to be connected to the internet? Well, now it does. If you want agentic shopping to actually work, if you want, to have your products replenish when they go out and done so in a seamless way. I do feel like commodities will be the first place where we will be willing to say, okay, here's my credit card, you go shop on my behalf. In a world where, agentic shopping hits, kind of the commodities ecosystem first, how does a brand maintain loyalty, I suppose, when the decision maker is a piece of code?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I hadn't really considered the fridge application until now. So, when you automate different things like purchases in your life, you're not thinking about them anymore. So, on Amazon, I have subscribe and save enabled for a number of different various household items. And then I'm not even thinking about it. Like, I don't even know what kind of paper towels it is anymore because it's just the same one that always orders. I think we've also seen brand loyalty start to dilute away from a lot of, especially direct to consumer brands. That, in the year after COVID, we saw, a huge spike on a lot of D2C offerings. But then as soon as money stopped flowing like it was with super low interest rates, the economics of those models weren't working as well. And it was hard to get people to come back and make a second purchase. We saw this at PopSockets too. Like, people don't normally buy phone accessories without getting a new phone. So that's kind of the catalyst or the trigger for people to start shopping for phones. And that same thing applies for a number of different, types of purchase behavior. How I think brands remain loyal is in the customer service. And even if you're not making the purchase, things go wrong, right? Your products break. You're going to need to warranty things. Maybe you're going to want to expand into the rest of their ecosystem. If it's, Apple products are experts at this. Their products all work really well together. Famously, Apple didn't really push features and it was more like a lifestyle. Like, I remember the old Mac versus PC commercial. They weren't talking about specs ever. It was just like, we're the cool guy. And the PC guy's the stuffy, guy wearing the suit. I think, Coke and Pepsi comes to mind too. Like, Pepsi kind of came on the scene in the 90s as like the cool kid brand. But that kind of like faded over time. And I think that brand loyalty is interesting. And, Kraft mac and cheese, people still like the blue box. Even though it's, arguably less quality than a lot of mac and cheese that you can buy. So I think it's that like emotional tie. And I've been asked before, like, the difference between brand and performance marketing, like which wins out. I think it's obviously a balance. But there's a reason why some of these brands have been Coca-Cola for 100 years. Like, people feel that as part of their personality, like as part of their inherent belief system, and that, like, I drink Coca-Cola and I would never get Pepsi. Like, it's, at the restaurant when they're like, is Diet Pepsi okay? Like, no. So, I think the emotional tie to a lot of these brands is how you can remain differentiated when the actual product or service is commoditized. And it's a challenge. Like, there's no easy fix on how to relate to humans as a brand. But, I think there's a lot of creative minds that do a really nice job. And yeah, it's fun to try and see like the millennial brands from, the mid 20 teens, like Allbirds famously. Like, people loved Allbirds. They were the darling of Silicon Valley and valued at $4 billion, but no one really cared, at the end of the day. And I think they just sold for like $30 million. And now they're an AI company. So, so their brand loyalty didn't really stick, and it was just kind of a boring shoe at the end of the day. Whereas, Nike is obviously sponsoring big athletes, and they have, different ways to relate to their end consumer. So where it's more of an aspirational lifestyle instead of just the product itself.
Yeah, I think you're so right. Like Allbirds is probably one of the greatest examples where, if you're solely focused on performance media, performance channels, kind of the lower funnel tactics, and you don't build a brand narrative at the top of the funnel, like you might have awareness. Like I know what Allbirds is, but I've never cared to buy one because, I'm not a price conscious shopper. I'm not responding to digital marketing. I'm buying brands that I have like an association with. Like this either associates with my lifestyle, it tells the story of, I'm a surfer from Southern California and this is what I'm into, or it's a prestige brand. Like I associate, like you talked about Nike, or any apparel brand, you associate like the attributes of like the aspiration of the types of people that wear those brands. And at the end of the day, if you don't build that top of funnel, like eventually you will become a commodity. And if you don't offer the best price, then people are going to easily ignore you.
Hey, I bet Allbirds had a killer ROAS in 2021, but once you burn through that pool, then all of a sudden it doesn't matter anymore, right?
Oh, that's crazy. Yeah, what a story. All right. What would you say is the future of a performance agency as more of these tasks get automated to AI agents, SEO, pay per click, et cetera? What do you think is the major line of service or value that performance agencies are going to provide to their clients? Is it strategy, ethics, something else?
Yeah, I'd say it's probably. I didn't consider the ethics piece. That's interesting. You know, a lot of what agencies offer is commoditized already, and it's if you spit a website into Claude or any of these LLMs, like it'll give you a pretty passable strategy for like how to do XYZ things. I think the agencies that are going to succeed, and you hear this a lot with the jargon around like what is your moat? Like have you created IP around certain? I don't tend to put much weight into that because you can replicate what another agency is doing, and I think that the power of agencies are really the people behind them and the clients. So where do those meet? It's the relationship, and I think that the agencies that truly invest in relationships with clients and try to understand the individual business nuance are the ones that will have lasting relationships. And, we've had clients at OuterBox for over 20 years in some cases.
Wow.
It's because of that. And like when I first heard that, I was like, that is mind blowing to me. I think there's people on the team that aren't even like 26 years old that are supporting these clients that have been with us for this long. But it's longstanding trust and knowing that we're actually taking the time to be a careful steward of their business and their marketing dollars. And I think the trust is the currency now, because even looking on, especially looking on, Instagram or any of the socials, you don't know what's real in a lot of ways anymore. The AIs are getting so good that someone who I would say I can sniff an ad out, pretty quickly. It's hard now to tell, and it's hard to tell even what videos are real. Any content on TikTok is probably sponsored if there's a product being featured. Opinions about politics or various different areas of our society are untrustworthy, right? And I think that if you can rest on trusting a partner, those are the agency services that will truly outlast. So yeah, I think the ethics piece is really important there, because the ethical relationship between agency and client is really what matters at the end of the day.
Yeah, I love that. I think, it's interesting that as we talk, I feel like the more people who I talk to about AI being, the unlock for productivity and scalability, like the more that time that's being freed up is centered on building real relationships in the real world with real people that are trust based. I think that's the interesting, byproduct of like this revolution, is that people are opting to spend most of that time, whether it's in the personal or the professional, doing things that are innately human. So I love the optimism there, and I think hopefully that feeds the AI optimist narrative versus the AI doomer narrative. So awesome, Matt. Well, hey, really great to get to know you a little bit over this interview today. If folks want to connect with you at OuterBox, learn more about the agency, or continue to follow along with your thinking, where do you want to send people?
Yeah, we're at outerboxdesign.com, or I'm always just a LinkedIn message away.
Awesome. Well, thanks for everybody who is watching. If this is the first time you're seeing the show, don't forget to subscribe or give us a follow. If you are listening to the podcast, an honest review on whatever podcast platform you happen to be listening on is how we find a larger audience organically. And if there is someone out there in brand marketing world or performance agency world, or just somebody who you think would enjoy the conversation that I have in that today, don't forget to share the show. And with that, I'll wish you a happy week. Thanks for spending a little bit of your morning with us, Matt. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Dylan. Thanks for having me on.